Hi there, it's Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative. And today's project is a Christmas card that was a really major coloring project that I did with just one stamp and a bunch of Spectrum Noir markers. Well, I guess there's two stamps technically. So that's the sort of the big major stamp, which is from Stampendous. It's called Santa Cruisin. And it was so cute, I could not resist it. And then for my greeting, I'll be using one from this Elizabeth Craft Designs Holiday Clear stamp set. I did stamp Santa using Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I knew I was going to be coloring him with Spectrum Noirs. So I've got a few different Spectrum Noir coloring videos out. I love Spectrum Noirs. I really enjoy coloring with them. They are alcohol-based markers, so somewhat similar to Copics, but less expensive. And my basic technique is I start out by laying down like a base coat of the lightest shade that I'm going to use for any particular area. So like here I have colored the entire car with TB1, and now I'm going to add in some shadows using TB2. Now I'm not being overly particular about light source or where the shadows are coming from on this project. Basically, I'm generally assuming it's from like the front and above. And so a general rule of thumb is kind of where planes change on an object, so like where the side of the car sticks out with the headlights away from the front, that's going to have some shading to it. Underneath objects are going to have some shading generally, and so that's kind of the rule of thumb that I go with. Could get more technical, but really you don't need to get some decent shading down. So I started out with TB2, I added in TB3, and I blended that back out with TB1. And now I'm darkening the shadows even more because I didn't really think they were dark enough. So I added in TB5, and now I'm sort of adding even more with some TB3, kind of making the shadows a little bit larger. And then I will go back and again sort of blend all of that out with TB1. And that going over everything that I've drawn in, so over those darker areas as well, and that sort of smooths out the blend and kind of creates sort of a somewhat seamless transition between the colors. It's not entirely seamless, but there's only so much we can do. So I like that. I like kind of being able to see a little bit of where you've drawn things in. Now for my red tones, I'm doing the exact same thing. So I'm starting out with the lightest shade, which is CR10, and I'm drawing that in on all areas like in the car right now that are going to have red. So that would be Santa's hat, Santa's arm of his suit, and then the bag that is behind the reindeer. And I'm just going to like base coat in that entire area in this lightest shade, which again is CR10. And then I'll start adding some shadows in. So my first shade is DR5. And so I'm just kind of going around areas that I feel like would have a little bit of shading. And I'm also trying to darken up the bag a little bit more because the bag is behind the reindeer and further back. So it's going to be a little darker than like, say, Santa's arm, for example. So I'm adding a third shade, which is DR7, again, to those same areas and darkening up even more of the bag. And then I'm going to blend all of that back out with the CR10. So exact same technique that I used on the car, and that creates again a nice fairly smooth blend. And I'm doing the exact same thing on the bow on the wreath here. So start out with CR10, added some DR5, add a little more DR7, blending it back out with CR10. For my greens, exact same technique. I start out with CG1. Now CG1 is a very light and pretty bright green, so I do something a little bit different here. I'm going to add in my first shade, which is DR3. For the wreath, I am just literally dotting that on in random places. On the tree, I'm being a little more careful about how I am adding shadows to the tree. Then I'm going to go to the third shade, which is DG6, again, dotting it on the wreath. And then, again, being a little more careful on the tree, darkening some of the shadows, adding in maybe a little more shadows. And here's where I do something different. I go back and I do CG2, which is a little bit darker than that initial green. And then I'm going to blend all this out with the CG1. The purpose of this is the CG2 is a better transition color between the CG1 and the DR3. The CG1 is a little too light to blend easily with the DR3, so the CG2 kind of provides that middle ground to blend all these green shades together a little bit better. But I did want the brightness of that CG1 in there, which was why I used that instead of just going directly from, say, CG2 to DR3. Hope that makes sense, but I felt like the colors in this card needed to be kind of bright, and so that's why I used mostly the CG1 on those green areas. Now for the trim on the car, I wanted it all to be silver, so I'm starting out with IG1 and then adding in a little shadows with IG2, and here I'm darkening some shadows with IG4. And especially like that grill section behind the front and the wreath is going to be even darker. And so I'm going in with a little bit of IG6 here to even darken in those shadows and the shadows around the license plate even more. And then I'm going to smooth all of that back out with the IG2 to again kind of create a smoother blend for those areas. Darkening in the IG4 a little bit more and then blending again with IG2. And now I'm going to add my tires. So these are white walls, of course, because it's such a cool car. So I start off with IG4, then I'm going to add in IG6 to darken down the tires and then the fronts on the road. And then I'm going to go with a little bit of IG8 in on the sides of the tires and the fronts, but just a little bit, not too much. And I'm smoothing all of that back out with IG4. Now I'm going to go to Santa's gloves, which are just some, this is again IG8, I think it's IG6, 8, and 10, or 6, 8, and 4, sorry, are the colors I use on his thing. So it's again the exact same technique. And for his face, I'm using FS3. I do add a little bit of shading with TN2, and then I give him some pink cheeks with PP1 and give his mouth some redness with the DR5. For my reindeer, again, same technique. So I'm starting out with TN2, which is the lightest shade that I'll be using on the reindeer, and I'm filling them in. Then I'm going to add in some sort of shadows, but it's also sort of some texture for fur with the TN7, and I'm going to blend all of that out with the TN2. It's looking kind of messy right now, but it does make sense in the end. So I'm trying to create sort of a medium brown shade for the deer with a little bit of shading on it with those two colors. And now I'm going to kind of add additional shading with the TN8 in various parts, and then I'm going to smooth that back out with the TN2 to get kind of just the right coloring without obscuring their faces too much on the deer. And of course, they have to have some pink cheeks with some PP1, right? So for their antlers, I used BG1 to start. Thought that was too light, so I added some more BG2. Then I went back and added a little more BG4. I did add some texture to that one reindeer's fur with the BG2. And now I am blending all of that back out with the BG1. So I think you got the feel now of kind of how I work with Spectrum Noirs. So I'm not going to show you every remaining little detail. We would just be here for an hour if I did that. So I think you've gotten the idea, and now I'm just going to show you some of the like specific little details that I added into some of the areas. With the headlights, I used BG1 and CT1. I didn't want them to look lit because I have a daytime scene, but I did want to give them some color. Then I do wind up using a lot of this Jelly Roll pen. It's Sakura Stardust in clear to add a lot of sort of glitteriness to various parts. I used a white gel pen, or the gel pen to add some dots onto one of the packages. I will use that gold marker and then another silver marker, both paint pens, to add some detailing to the packages and the tree ornaments. And now I'm just drawing in the road, and I did that with a mechanical pencil very lightly, and I just kind of followed the angle of the car, the way the car was drawn, to figure out how to draw it in and kind of the perspective that's shown on the stamped image. So now I am just laying a base coat down with IG6, and I'm going to come back in and add some darkness in under the car with some IG8. If you remember, I colored the tires in with mostly IG4 and mostly IG6, so I'm using more IG8 and IG10 under the car to create the visual separation between the road and the tires. I didn't want them to blend right into each other. And now with the road, I'm just blending all that back out with IG6. Here I'm adding a little more shadows. And then I'm going to put the stripes in with some CT4. And then I take my mechanical pencil and write ho, ho, ho on the license plate. Didn't do it so well the first time, so I'm doing it the second time. And I go over that with a Copic liner, just to add that little detail to the license plate. And now I'm just drawing some snowbanks in on the side of the road. I wanted to add some glitter to Santa, so I'm taking a glue pen and coloring in the trim on his suit and then the trim on his hat. And I'm going to pour some Martha Stewart fine glitter in crystal all over that. And then I am going to take my Sakura glaze pen, black glaze pen, to add the eyes into the reindeer because they're getting lost. And then this chalk pen does a really nice job of adding a reflection onto the glass of the car windshield. And finally, I'm going to add Rudolph's nose, who Rudolph, of course, is in the front, with some tonic glitter drops in Ruby Slippers, which is a real glittery red. And then I am going to fussy cut out this image. Now, I won't show you all of that. Right now, I am just kind of fussy cutting around to get the snowbanks separated fairly well from the items that are right up next to it, because I want to coat those using the Tonic Nouveau glitter drops in White Blizzard, which is a really cool white and iridescent glittery liquid. And then it kind of cracks here and there, which is sort of cool. It looks like ice potentially, which is really fun. Now I set that aside to dry, and then I stamped my greeting, which is "May your season be oh so merry," off of this Elizabeth Craft Designs stamp set in VersaFine pigment ink on Onyx Black. Now I let that dry for a little bit, and now I am just going to fill in those tiny openings in the word merry with my distress marker in Candied Apple. The Spectrum Noir nibs on the brush on those markers were just too thick to fill these in, so I had to go with something even thinner. So I'm using the fine side of my distress marker for that. And then I'm back to my Stardust Jelly Roll pen to add some glitter into the season word. I'm just writing season inside the openings of that word to give it a little bit of glitter. So to assemble everything, I am going to be putting Santa's car onto that blue paper that sort of looks like sky. It has some distressing on it that looks a little bit like clouds. And so I'm covering that with a block to let it dry flat. Now I'm adding some fun foam, a little bit of leftover fun foam I had from another project, to the back of the greeting in order to give that a little bit of dimension. And then I'm going to adhere all of this down to this really cool red mirrored cardstock, and that's going on to the front of an A2 size card base. And I'm trimming off my little extra snowbank there, and I'm going to adhere the entire thing down after I trace the black road with a marker, because it had a really white edge on it when I put it against the black. And now I'm going to just adhere down the greeting to the upper left corner. And that is basically the completed project. Now, there was a lot of coloring in this, so I would not say you probably can't do 50 of these unless you have a lot of time. But a couple special cards with this much coloring would be really, really cute. I think it came out amazingly well, and I just love the image so much I could not resist. I had to do something with it. So hopefully I've given you a little inspiration and help with working with Spectrum Noir markers, and thank you so much for watching. As always, I truly appreciate it. There is a link to the supply list for this project in the video description below, as well as on my blog, and here are 2 additional Spectrum Noir videos I have done that you could click on for additional Spectrum Noir coloring if you are interested in that. I really, really appreciate you watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, and even better, subscribe to my channel. Thanks!